Right. Is this centered?
I mean, we can. Ish.
Okay. Well, welcome back to HM&E Review Things. We are going to do board games. We've been doing reviews on the last year, 2022, and our top 5 movies. Check that out. Top 5 TV shows. Check that out. If you're looking for things to watch, we'd love to see what you think as well. Let us know. But Elvin is going to do board games. Now, I don't play as many board games as him at all, but he wants to talk about his top 4.
5. I do have 5.
You have 5. Great. 5 board games.
Of 2022 and 21. It's a 2-year run.
Oh, well, that makes sense. I mean, how many board games?
There are lots of board games that come out.
Oh, okay.
When I looked just on the release, I think it's probably like approaching like 1,000 new board games come out
per year.
Last year, yeah. And so obviously most of them are going to be like, I would say 80-90% of them are just not going to be great.
So someone wants to strike gold.
Yeah. And when they do, like some of these ones that I'm going to mention, I mean, they're published by huge publishers, but they sell like crazy, and like their secondary market for them sell for a lot because it takes a while for the reprint. So there's a lot, but I only buy a certain number of board games a year. I've only tried a certain number of board games a year. And so I wasn't able to find 5 that were all released in 22. So I went back one additional year, 21, 22.
So let me ask you this question, as you're the more board game fanatic, is what makes you put something on your top 5?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what makes a good board game in general, I think first of all, for me, it's art. The art on the cover has to be interesting, has to be captivating. Like when if I'm just scrolling through, or if I see an interesting box cover, yeah, that's good. That's a good one. That's a good one. Actually, all 3 of these are kind of interesting covers that I would kind of look more into.
Art, okay.
Art is a big thing. Obviously, just how the game plays, the mechanics, certain ones that I like more than others. Table presence is another big thing. When you have it out on the table, if it's just a sea of browns and grays, that's not really going to be very interesting to me. There's a game coming out this year. It's called Steam Up, and it's about dim sum.
Oh.
And it has a little rotating tray and little stacks of the dim sum bamboo things, and so stuff like that,
but that
instantly captures me.
Right, but that's gimmicky.
Maybe, but sometimes gimmicks still translate to a decent game. But so gameplay ultimately wins out. So
gameplay, and that includes how you play with other players and the mechanics of how that interaction goes, right?
I mean, I have some games here. Do I have? I have 3 of these of my top 5 that you can actually play solo. A lot of games now come out with solo variants since the pandemic.
Oh,
board games come out and then they'll kind of modify it a little bit so that you can add a little something, or there's a sheet so that you can play it first player against like an AI. So it's more like a solitaire video game experience almost type of thing.
You know, as a much less board gamer, I sort of look for I don't call it, it's sort of the simple enjoyability of it.
Sure.
If it bogs me down with a million details,
yes.
I tend to tune out. I feel like when you go to a board game night, you're there to kind of have fun with friends and interact and just relax. And if I'm counting how many I
mean, you say that. Of course, last month we just participated in a 12-hour Twilight Imperium game.
Yes.
Our second Twilight Imperium game.
Once every 6 months I can handle. But if I got to do that every week, then it'll be insane. Right. But I do enjoy my share of board games, just not as much as you. So let's go through it. What's your top? Your 5th one.
My number 5 is a sequel to a game that came out a few years ago, but this came out, I think, 21. I think it was a 21 game, but it's called Micro Macro.
Okay.
And this one is called Micro Macro Full House. Micro Macro, when you open it, there's kind of small envelopes kind of for missions, but the whole thing is the main game is a big roll-up kind of map. And it rolls out, I mean, it's deeper than this table, and it's really, really wide. And it's sort of like a Where's Waldo?
Okay.
But instead of Waldo appearing once, Waldo, to continue the example, you would see Waldo in various phases of his day. You know, Waldo comes out, and so on the map, Waldo actually shows up more than once. But it's Waldo coming out of his house, so it's Waldo buying some ice cream. It's Waldo, but it's called Crime City, Micro Macro Crime City Full House. Crime City it's because these are crimes that are happening, and so it's actually a mystery game or like a detective game, and it'll start you saying, "Oh, look at this crime! Find this crime that has happened on the map." And then you have to figure out, okay, who committed the crime? What was stolen? Where did they go afterwards? And you have to kind of look around the map, kind of trailing, oh, this this bank was robbed here, and then you can see, oh wait, this over here a little further back is when the robber's getting out of their car, and then the car came from this warehouse over here, and then and so it uses just kind of a little magnifying glass, and you're just supposed to be solving crimes.
Wait, but is this a 2-player game?
I mean, you can play it single player. I played it with my kids, and my kids played it kind of by themselves as well.
But once you play it,
you can't play it again.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you kind of remember, like, oh, it was, they stole the emerald, and the emerald is over here now, and they crashed the hang glider when they escaped.
So in other words, you're gonna just give me this game so I can play it after.
You should actually. It's a great. Yeah, I should give it to you. So this was a follow up to Micro Macro, the original Micro Macro Crime City, where like some of the crimes were a little less family oriented.
Oh yes.
And so some of them were more brutal. They kind of were, and they're drawn in kind of these cartoony style, but. So they came, because of the feedback they got from that, which was great, but I wish I could play this with my family. They came out with this one called Full House, which has more family-friendly crimes.
Okay.
Burglary.
Oh, that's family-friendly.
I think there aren't any murders, murders here.
Like
so I think that's better.
Stole their dog or something.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. But the mechanic's still the same. There's actually another sequel coming out because these games have been received so well. Right. Micro Macro, Full House.
Cool.
My number 4 is a small card game from a Japanese company called Oink, published by Oink Games. You might not have, but their boxes come like this big, and I
think I've seen that.
Yeah, well, yeah. I have actually I think 4 or 5 games from them. They produce a whole line. This latest one is called Scout. From what I understand, it's a re-implementation of an older game, but it's a card game for 3 to 5 players.
Okay.
Where you kind of play hands to kind of beat one another. There's kind of mechanics, but the main gimmick is if you want to play a straight 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or whatever, or even any string of a three twos or 6, 7, 8. They're numbered 1 to 10. They have to be physically touching each other in addition to being in a sequence. And then there's mechanics of how you can take cards to kind of build a really strong hand. So that you can play it and beat everyone else. But then when the round is over, if you have it, you lose points for every card that's in your hand. So if you take too long to build
What's the difference between this and a regular deck of cards?
Good question. The cards have a top and a bottom that are a different number.
Okay.
And so there's a little bit of a gimmick so that when you pick up a card, it's not just one number. You can actually use it as either number, and you can put it anywhere in your hands. So the cheap person
could just get a card from the dollar store and just do it.
Yeah, you could.
Okay.
I think you could. You would take 2 packs of cards, you just glue them together or something.
All right.
So that's Scout by Oink Games. My number 3 was a game gifted to me by our one-time guest contributor, Vince, I think last Christmas or 2 Christmases ago. It's called Cascadia.
Okay.
It's a tile game. Cascadia apparently is an ecological region in the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, Washington State, that kind of whole area. And it's about kind of the animals and the environments there. And you pick up tiles. It's a tile laying game where you try to score points depending on how you arrange your tiles and that kind of stuff. And then it has the 5 different types of animals. It has bears, wolves, salmon, eagles, and something else. And they all score differently. And it's a great game because, there's a lot of... The term in board game circles is it's a gateway game. It's a simple enough game for you to be able to introduce to anyone, even if their only experience with board games is Monopoly. Because modern board games, some of them can be really complicated.
Yes.
And you can't jump from Monopoly to some of those, but some of these gateway games allow for that, where it's really easy to pick up, but it introduces that kind of strategy, that kind of element of agency with beyond Monopoly of rolling a dice and going wherever it says, and allows you to make interesting choices. And the game looks beautiful. The art is very, very nice. Cascadia is my number 3.
By the way, on a side note, do you have any dishonorable mentions, or all the board games you played are pretty good?
If I had time, I could probably come up with a dishonorable mention list, because sometimes I buy board games and then I try them and I just don't like them and I just sell them right away afterwards. Actually, what I did get is called Marvel Dice Throne.
Okay.
It's basically Yahtzee. No, I'm serious. So
Wolverine's there.
You choose a character.
Okay.
You choose a character, and they have powers. It's like you can choose Loki, you can choose Scarlet Witch, and if you roll, you can re-roll a few times to try to get this, and they'll do a special power, and you're just trying to defeat your opponent. It sounded good on paper. I love Marvel. I like Yahtzee, but the game didn't work for me.
When you pick the board games that you like, is it a result of who you're playing with?
I think that's a big part of it.
Some people like certain games and it clicks, and some you don't want to play it anymore because no one really clicks with this game.
Yeah, and so my primary gaming board gaming group is with Rob and Vince and sometimes other people, but primarily those two. We have very different tastes in board games. I know for a long time I tried to introduce real-time games where there's elements where it's like you all have to rush to do something at the same time, and who can do it better, and that they hate it. They hate it. And so I had a couple of those games that just never got to the table because they never were willing to try after the first time. And I like it, or at least I think I like it. I don't get to try it very often, but yeah,
I think
that's
you
an element of
like
it.
the most variety of games.
I do.
Some people
that's
are
probably
very
true.
specific, like
true.
myself, in terms
probably
of
true.
there's certain games that I'm just like, I'll play. There's some games that I'd rather not.
Yeah.
But I think you have the biggest.
And I really enjoy learning new games and teaching new games. I like that a lot. I like trying new games.
That's right.
So
Okay, what's your number 2?
my number 2, so on a website called Board Game Geek, which is the largest board game website in the world, they catalog hundreds of thousands of board games over the years, and they rank them on whatever. They have a list called the hotness list.
Okay.
Basically kind of getting the most buzz. People are searching for it the most, clicking on it most, saying that they want it the most.
Okay.
And this game has been on the hotness list, in the top 5 hotness list for the longest time. It's called Arc Nova.
You reviewed that.
Oh, I did review it. Yeah, I did review it.
Check out the review.
Not many people watched it, but it's my number 2 best board game that came out in the past 2 years. It's a zoo type game, kind of like a Zoo Tycoon or a Zoo Manager kind of game. You work with you can play
And it
against
looks
other
really
people.
nice.
It looks beautiful, and I usually hate it when games. For their art, they use real life pictures because usually that's just lazy and it's usually ugly and it's usually like it clashes with the rest of the board game. But especially in this particular instance of animals, it actually does work very well. So number 2 is Arc Nova, beautiful game. I mean, talking about the cover of this is just this beautiful green and there's some animals on that. Arc Nova. And my number 1 game, there's probably some recency bias in terms of just kind of. I like newer things, is a game called Heat, Pedal to the Metal. It's a racing game. It's a...
sounds like an 80s game.
Well, it's set
Pedal
in...
to the metal?
Yeah. It's set in the 60s.
Okay.
60s Formula One world.
Wasn't far off.
But, I mean, that's all irrelevant. It's made by the same people that made another racing game based on the Tour de France called Flamme Rouge. But this racing game is a little bit more refined. At once, though, it's also a little bit more complicated. There's a little more nuance to it. Heat, Pedal to the Metal. You at its core, you have cards that are numbered 1 to 5, and you choose how many cards you play each turn, and you go the speed that it says. Why wouldn't you just go super fast all the time? Because there are corners that check how fast you go. Okay. There are ways to slipstream. There are ways to kind of boost, and all these little mechanics that kind of make that core simple mechanic of if I play a 5, I move 5 spaces. Way more interesting.
So there's a board with a car on it.
It comes with 2 really large boards with 6 little mini cars.
Okay.
And each board is 2-sided, so there's 4 tracks: USA, Italy, France, and Great Britain, or United Kingdom. And then obviously it's going to be super easy for them to release expansions of
course.
Here's a new track. If it does well, which it is doing very, very well. It's sold out kind of everywhere. I managed to get it a copy kind of before. Like right when I saw the review for it, I was like, oh yeah, that's gonna hit right for me. And I love it, and the kids love it. They have a AI system where you can run all the other cars, and it's super simple to do. That my kids, my daughter woke up one morning on a Sunday early, and she just played it herself because it's that easy. My 9-year-old daughter can just flip a card, and she knows how to run all the other cars, and she was racing, and it's great. I love racing. I love board games. I've been looking for a good racing board game for a long time. Heat, Pedal to the Metal.
I mean, it just sounds antithetical. Like what?
For a speed thing.
Yeah, and you're playing a board game. But look, maybe that's a genius of it. I don't know.
Yeah, So don't listen to this guy for board games. I may have a little bit more on that.
I'm surprised Twilight Imperium's not on your list.
Well, Twilight Imperium didn't come out in the past 2 years. I mean, actually, did it? A 4th edition, I think, came out maybe 3 years ago, something like that.
Okay.
That is a very good game. There is a roll and write version that might be an honorable mention called Twilight Inscription. Roll and writes are generally these really, really light games where it's called roll and write because you roll some dice and then you check off some things. I guess, yeah, and you check off things and you try to. There's a game kind of around that genre.
Okay.
And Twilight Inscription is maybe the most complicated roll and write ever.
Is this the same world as Twilight Imperium?
Exactly. It's set in the same world. And so they're saying that, you can have the same experience of Twilight Imperium, a 12-hour game, into 2 hours.
I somehow doubt that, but okay.
And that's kind of how they sold it. And people who were expecting that were very disappointed because it's not that.
Okay.
It's not that. It's a decent, good roll and write game that just happens to be set in the same universe, that uses some of the same language in terms of, the units are the same. The races are the same. There are trade goods. There's voting, but really it's all very different from the actual main game.
That's cool. That's I would say, solid top 5. Not that I know better, but I guess my question is, how does this compare to the last 10 years of board games? Is this a strong year, a bad year?
I was only able to find, I think, 3 that came out this past year. So maybe, there are others that are supposed to be quite good that I haven't played. I don't know. Every year, so many good board games come out.
Is there a monopoly of our generation? Some board game that everybody knows. It's referenced in movies.
I think Catan is probably the big one, and you've played Catan.
Yeah,
and you have a copy of Catan.
Yeah, Star Trek Catan. I have
Ticket to Ride.
Okay.
Those are the kind of the really big mainstream ones.
Right.
But the big ones that kind of more recent years that have been hitting it really, really big that you might have heard of is Gloomhaven.
Of course. That's like a 3-year game.
Pandemic.
Yes, I've heard
Pandemic
of that.
Legacy. These are some of the top ones.
Okay.
Twilight Imperium, I think, is number 5 on Board Game Geek.
Yep.
Arc Nova, I think, is number 4.
Okay.
So these are just great games that have come out recently. So these are the top 5. Board gaming has seen such a resurgence since the days of Catan. Catan kind of blew the doors wide open. Mm-hmm. And we're getting, honestly, thousands of new board games a year. It's really difficult to keep up, to find things that are interesting, to find things that other people maybe haven't heard of. But board gaming, I love board gaming. It kind of brings that analog kind of conversation back to the table, that fun back at the table, instead of video games, which are also great. But
we've done movie reviews, check that out, TV reviews. I guess getting to a little bit board game reviewing, the last category of entertainment we haven't really touched is video games. And you're a big video game guy. I don't know if I play enough to do top 5 every year. Certainly play a few a year, especially when you loan me the PS5 and I can just play it. So
I think our top video game would be the same. But maybe we'll save that for another video. But that's it for top 5 board games of 22 and 21. Maybe if I try more every year, I can try out and it's kind of weird because I tried a lot more board games in 22, but not all of them came out in 22.
Sure.
Like Vince in particular, he finds kind of like older. No surprise. Older kind of gems, and they're really good games, and he'll introduce them. And I try a lot of games through that for a long time, but they're not games that just came out. So anyway, those are the board games. Have you played these top 5? What do you think of them? Have you been able to get a copy of Heat, Pedal to the Metal? If you have, let me know what you think. If there's anything that came out in the past few years that I missed, also let us know in the comments. That's it for this episode. Until next episode, keep playing good board games.
Yeah, and if you like what you're watching, please subscribe to our channel. Love to hear more from you, and keep watching things, enjoying things, and we'll see you.
Even if you don't like the channel, just like and subscribe. That'd be nice.
If you hate us.
Yeah, that's okay too. All right, thanks.